Some truths are too horrifying to imagine, and for one family, the realization came too late. In the peaceful town of Ridgewood, nestled in the rolling hills of upstate New York, the Harris family thought they knew everything about their only daughter, Emily. A model student and beloved member of the community, Emily seemed like the embodiment of potential. But hidden beneath her bright smile was a darkness that no one saw coming. The Harris' daughter had been living a double life, one that would shock the town to its core. This is the story of how a family's world unraveled when they learned that the person they loved most was hiding the darkest secret imaginable. Emily Harris was the star student of Ridgewood Central School. She led the varsity cheer squad, competed in mock Senate competitions, and was well on her way to claiming the valedictorian title for her graduating year. Her parents were well known in this small upstate New York town. Her father was a local accountant and her mother ran a popular salon. From afar, the Harrises seemed like an all-American family. But behind the scenes, Emily's busy life was hiding something horrifying. It started with small, seemingly harmless incidents, mysterious absences, unexplained scratches on Emily's hands, and mood swings that left her parents concerned. At first, they attributed it to the pressures of school and teenage rebellion. But as time went on, the strange behavior became harder to ignore. Emily would disappear for hours, sometimes entire nights, offering vague excuses about studying with friends or volunteering at events her parents later learned never existed. The first real crack appeared when a neighbor mentioned seeing Emily in an unfamiliar part of town, far from her usual hangouts. Her mother, Carol Harris, brushed it off at first, but a gnawing sense of unease began to settle in. It wasn't until Carol stumbled upon Emily's notebook, filled with violent sketches and unsettling phrases, that her worry turned to fear. Carol's discovery began with an innocent curiosity. One evening, while cleaning Emily's room, she noticed a small, unfamiliar notebook tucked beneath the mattress. At first glance, it seemed like typical teenage musings, doodles, notes, and to-do lists. But the deeper Carol looked, the more unsettling the contents became. Detailed sketches of crime scenes, strange symbols, and names that seemed oddly familiar were scrawled in the margins. A sinking feeling took hold in her stomach as she realized some of those names matched recent missing persons mentioned on the local news. Terrified and frantic, Carol showed the notebook to her husband, David. Together, they tore through Emily's belongings and stumbled upon more disturbing clues. A hidden burner phone filled with cryptic messages, a drawer containing a collection of what appeared to be mementos, and news clippings that chronicled several unsolved murders in the area. As the horrifying realization set in, they knew this was no coincidence. Their daughter had been living a double life, one far removed from the bright, promising student they thought they knew. Desperate and horrified, Carol dug deeper, uncovering more unsettling details. A bag of crumpled up clothing she had never seen before, trophies from the victim stashed under her bed, and detailed plans of future attacks scrawled in code. David, frozen with disbelief, questioned how they could have missed such darkness growing within their home. The pair argued about approaching Emily face to face, their anxiety eating away at them as doubt clashed with the increasing proof. When they finally sat her down, her reaction horrified them. She didn't cry, deny, or give any justifications for her actions. Instead, she observed them with a sense of detachment and calm, her facial expression strangely serene, as though she had anticipated this moment from the start. They felt shaken by the uncomfortable silence and lack of guilt or fear. Carol and David were frozen, coming to terms with the terrifying reality that their daughter, whom they had lovingly raised, was a stranger to them. The start of their nightmare had only just begun. Carol and David were silent in shock after Emily's disturbing revelation, trying to understand what they had been told. At first, they couldn't believe it. Perhaps it was a mistake, a plea for help, or a dark prank. However, as Emily calmly explained her actions thoroughly, not leaving any room for uncertainty, the burden of truth became too much to bear. They understood they had no choice but to act, even if it involved surrendering their daughter to the authorities. Unable to bear the enormity of the situation alone, David made the call to the police, his voice shaking as he relayed the impossible truth. The officers on the other end of the line were skeptical at first. After all, Emily was known as a bright, promising student, not someone capable of the horrific crimes she described. But as David repeated the details she had confessed, the gravity of the situation became clear. Law enforcement instructed the Harrises to remain calm and stay inside until officers arrived. During the stressful moments that came next, Carol and David found themselves stuck in the house with Emily, anticipating the arrival of the authorities. Each second was excruciating. Emily remained seated at the kitchen table in a disturbingly calm manner, displaying no signs of trouble despite the unusual event. Carol, feeling heartbroken and numb, could barely bring herself to look at her daughter. Desperately, David paced, looking out the window, hoping to hear the sound of sirens. When the police finally arrived, they moved quickly and methodically. Officers secured the perimeter, ensuring that Emily had no chance to flee, though she made no attempt to resist. She stood without protest as they placed handcuffs on her wrists, her face cold and blank. Carol's chest tightened, each breath a struggle as she watched the officers lead her daughter away, the weight of the moment hitting her with crushing force. David stood motionless, his expression distant yet filled with disbelief as Emily was escorted away. It wasn't just the arrest of their daughter, it was the shattering of the life they thought they had built, the unraveling of every moment they had believed in as a family. In the months that came after, the Harris family found it difficult to accept that the daughter they had known was truly a murderer. The portrayal of Emily in the media as a monster caused her parents to become outcasts in their own town. Neighbors they had been close with for years avoided even making eye contact with them. Even their close friends stayed away. Each day seemed like a fresh punishment, serving as a constant reminder that the beloved life they once had was now lost forever. Emily's trial became a media sensation, drawing national attention as the chilling details of her double life were revealed. For weeks, the courtroom was packed with reporters, curious onlookers, and devastated members of the community. Carol and David sat in the front row, every day a fresh ordeal as they listened to testimony that shattered their already fragile hearts. They learned of Emily's cold, calculated actions, the meticulous planning behind each of her crimes, and the disturbing lack of remorse she exhibited throughout. When the verdict was read, the courtroom was heavy with silence. Emily was found guilty on all counts, multiple first-degree murders. As the judge sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole, the weight of finality settled over the room. Carol clutched David's hand, tears silently streaming down her face, while David sat frozen, numb and empty. Emily stood at the defense table, emotionless, as if the trial had been nothing more than a formality. She never once looked back at her parents. The fallout from the trial was immediate and unforgiving. The Harris name became synonymous with tragedy and betrayal, a stain they could never escape. Strangers speculated about how such a bright young woman could have become a killer, while others whispered accusations, blaming Carol and David for not seeing the signs. They left the courthouse that day knowing that their lives, like Emily's, had been sentenced to something unrecognizable, a life they never imagined, one haunted by the question that would follow them forever. What went wrong? Even with justice served, there was no true sense of closure. The trial had answered what Emily did, but not why. And for Carol and David, that was the most agonizing part.